Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural as well as the latest episode of Legacies. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time I'm going to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Supernatural, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Legacies. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Supernatural. So obviously we're picking up fairly soon after the events of the last episode, and this episode kind of answers and kind of puts a lot of interesting things in perspective that I didn't really think about. Well, for one, as a whole Rowena situation, it's like, yeah, Rowena's kind of dealing with this and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I mean, for one, I'm sure like being possessed by Michael is very reminiscent of just kind of like the complicated situation she has with Lucifer, so it'd be a situation, it probably kind of brings a little bit of that like PTSD that she has kind of back from that. But also the fact that she killed all those hunters. And that sucks because for Rowena, it's like, oh, I'm doing all this good stuff. You know, she was a good guy now. And for her to kind of regress. And, you know, obviously it wasn't her fault. Michael was in control, but she's the one that said yes. So it's just kind of that thing of like Dean kind of like every bad thing Michael did when he was in Dean's body. It was like, that was on me because I said yes. So Rowena's kind of feeling that too, you know. But it hits her even harder because it's like I said, she rebranded herself. She was like, I'm a good guy. I'm working with the team. I'm working with the Winchesters. And lo and behold, that happens. It's hitting Sam hard because for the first time, like, Sam's lost people before too, but this hits him even harder because he was in charge of all these people, all these hunters. They were his responsibility, and to lose them like that, it's a heavy weight to carry, you know. So, and for him especially, because every time he looks around, it's like all the different hunters, including Maggie, you know, just having to bury all of them too. It's just, well, not necessarily bury them because hunters, you know, burn bodies and stuff like that. You know, just so they don't come back as ghosts and stuff like that. So they can, you know, find peace essentially. So, and then there's the whole Jack situation, kind of picking up what I brought up, like, you know, is Jack, you know, Jack's got his powers back and everything, but even he's like, yeah, it doesn't feel the same as it did before. Now the question is like, okay, so how much of his soul did he burn off? It's like, we don't know. Which that kind of divides the episode up into interesting parts because obviously Sam is just keeping himself busy. He ends up bringing it up later on, which is kind of a sad thing. But the whole thing is like he decides he doesn't want to stay home because if he stays home, it's just a reminder. And just because everywhere he looks, he sees a body. So him and Castiel go on a case. It involved this dude named Conrad whose head blows up. I love that dude at the convenience store. Griffin be like, dude, you okay? And then just he walks over and then a piece of his head falls and hits the ground and going splat. And you just see him in the background and the screen's a little kind of like out of focus, but he's just throwing up kind of a depth field shot, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, this is all about a place named Charming Acres, which obviously in one of the movies you see at the matinee playing is Scooby-Doo, which I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because obviously there's the Scooby-Natural episode, but also like there's the whole aspect of like, right, because I think I constantly forget. I don't remember if I brought this up even during the Scooby-Natural, because I think I forget. It's like, yeah, both properties are owned by Warner Brothers, so of course they can do that stuff without it being like an issue or anything like that. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting because it's kind of like a Riverdale meets Pleasantville, which is an interesting thing for me to use considering like I'm not that familiar with that movie. But that whole aspect of like, oh, this is some crazy peaceful town, and it also has that aesthetic like Riverdale. I wonder even like, oh yeah, at this, you know, ice cream place or whatever to get milkshakes, and like you call the dude who runs the place Pops, which I'm like, okay, so part of me wonders, this is like a wink and a nod to Riverdale in some shape or form. I would assume so, just because like it has like that aesthetic. Because even the dude being like, whoa, Sam, what's that you got in your hands? It's like, is that, he's like, you mean my cell phone? It's like, cell phone. I even love it. I'm skipping around and stuff like, well, I love that. In fact, is even like when it was all said and done and revealed, the guy was like, it's like, yeah, I'm the one behind everything. It's like, what do you think, it was a milkshake? So it's like, yeah, I thought that's what it was. Because when Sam drunk it, I was like, because you knew they made such a point to point out that Cassio didn't drink it. I'm like, Sam, and then he started acting a little different. I'm like, Sam literally drank the proverbial Kool-Aid in this situation. It's actually kind of a messed up town situation because that dude ended up like, obviously Sam bringing up the cell phone and everything, because that made me go like, okay, because the way his wife was just kind of like nonchalant about it, I'm like, oh, she must be like some supernatural creature or whatever, maybe a witch or whatever that has him under a spell, because she didn't seem that broken up about her. It didn't seem like it affected her, but it affected the husband. He was like, cell phone, but then it made him realize like, no, I have a life of my own, like, why am I here? I gotta go. And the moment he tries to leave, his head explodes like Conrad. So it's like, okay, so what's going on? It's like, so the moment they realize the truth that something's up, their head's exploding. And then I was like, oh, looking at his wife's reaction of like, honey, it's like, oh, she's under the same spell or whatever too. It is interesting. What I'm curious about too is that lady who ran that place that Conrad was staying at. She was, complimenting Sam and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, like I rent this place out to young men because, can't let some young lady stay in here by herself. Morals and all that. You should know all about it. And she looks at Castiel. I'm like, what the hell is that supposed to be? Is it because on some level she knows Castiel isn't under the spell and stuff like that? That's what I was wondering. So that was really interesting. And then, Sam playing the role of, Justin Smith. It's like, ma'am, your husband's dead. It's like, no, he's not. And it's like, hey. And he's just kind of like, and then Cassidy will be like, you need to snap the hell out of it. He's like, excuse me, so we don't use that language in here. H-E double hockey sticks. If you can't clean up your mouth, you can skedaddle. Even telling him, was like, we should wash your mouth out for soap for saying something like that. And Castiel's like, H-E double hockey sticks? What the hell? I love it. And so it is interesting because it's interesting to see like what has an effect on angels and what don't. I mean, supernaturals in general. But like obviously the spell has no effect on it. It's kind of sad because like the guy that's behind all this is the mayor, and it's like, well, his reasoning for doing this, it's like, hey, he lost his wife and things were kind of falling apart in the town. He just wanted things to be better. It seems like he developed some kind of psychic ability. It's interesting because they didn't dive into it all. It's just kind of like this little tidbit of like, oh, it's kind of like this, and just kind of leave it at that. It's literally not till the end of the episode where it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Preacher, the comic book / TV show. Obviously, I'm more familiar with the TV show than I am the comic book / graphic novel. But it kind of reminds me of the Word of God because it's like he says something and it kind of is like people have to listen to what he says. And I'm like, that's interesting in that regard. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. Obviously this isn't that directly that. It is more of like it makes, because I was like, because it turns out Sonny's immune to it too. Because I was like, he's like, oh, you're just like me. And it turns out, oh yeah, because that's his daughter. So whatever his situation is, it seems like it is genetic because it passed on to his daughter. So that's why she was the only one that was immune to it. Because the sad thing is, like, he tried to twist it on her, be like, oh, I'm not the one that killed Conrad. You are. You told him the truth, and he tried to leave, and so I had no choice to kill him. That was on you. It's like, so you're still admitting the fact that you had to kill him, but you're like, it's still her fault that it played out like that because she was in love with him and she wanted him to get away. Because the sad thing is, it's like she stayed because like mom made me promise that I would look after you. Because after losing his wife, obviously he kind of fell apart, and like as a daughter, she had to stay behind. And it's kind of sad having to play this role, because she wanted, because at the very least, she wanted to keep her dad happy. Because if he's happy and everything's kind of working fine, and everything's kind of going along smoothly, then less likely to kill people. I think so. She was trying to keep him in a good mood and stuff like that. So, because I was kind of expecting her to be like, oh, I'm a witch or something. So it is kind of, interesting because she ended up stopping her dad, and she was like, if you want to be happy, and basically trapped him inside of his own head. It's like, it's a good place, but it's still kind of like, yeah, I don't know if there's any coming out of that. And it's never, I'm curious, like, are we going to see more of Sunny in the future or something like that? Because we just get introduced to someone with powers and we just kind of let her be. It's like, what happens to the rest of the town? Because like obviously a lot of those people in that town aren't from that town. Because like use Justin, because that wasn't even his real name, but Justin Smith, the first one, obviously not Sam, but that dude, his whole thing was like, oh, he talked about the fact he had a daughter and everything. I mean, granted, we don't know how long he was actually there, stuff like that. Either way, it's a sad thing of like, oh yeah, even if that is the case, he won't be able to return to his daughter. So it's like, geez, it's kind of like there's even like layers to that sadness of that aspect. But I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation between Castiel and, Sam when Sam was under control. He's like, I get it. You want to be happy and stuff like that after what happened. You're trying to run from it. But it's like, the fact of the matter is, I know where you're coming from. Because like Castiel's been in that exact same situation, leading all of these people and like all the people that you're in charge of dying. That's a heavy burden to bear. And you feel like a failure as a leader. But you have to kind of go on for Dean's sake, for Jack's sake, and for the sake of those who are no longer here. Like if you just kind of succumb to this, then it almost kind of makes it, it's almost like spitting in their faces essentially, so. But fortunately, Sam was able to come back from it. I love it, and because Chip was like, oh, here I'm like God, and Sam's like, no, you're not, because we've met God. And you have Castiel being like, and God has a beard. It's just such a weird, funny little thing to kind of add on like there. So there's that side of things. Like I said, I'm very interested to see if they do anything, with Sunny in the near future. Because like I said, it's just interesting to kind of establish that character and kind of didn't do too much with it in that regard of like, oh yeah, let's exchange numbers. At the very least, they didn't say anything. So it's like, if anything goes down, we can count on you for help, or even finding out what she is exactly. I guess it is just simply like, oh, you've kind of got psychic powers, and just kind of leave it at that. I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. But the other side of things is, obviously, Jack is acting a little weird, trying to feed the snake and stuff like that. And I love the entire episode. Dean's kind of like, nah, snakes, yeah, I've always thought they were cool, yeah. It's like, why are you trying to... I don't know whether that's just Dean trying to be the tough guy and everything, but it's just kind of like, you don't like snakes, admit it. Hell, I don't like snakes. I have no shame at admitting that. It's just kind of made my skin crawl too, but he tries to pretend like he's A-okay. I even love in the car, when he gives that food to Jack, and one's like an angel cake thing, and the other one's a devil one, and he's flipping back and forth between them, and you see Dean, because it's literally him just choosing food, but because of everything, it's almost like a moral choice just then, and you see him kind of messing with the devil one, but then he puts it down and gets the angel one. You have Dean be like, oh shit, thank goodness. I'm like, it's so interesting because it's just food. What if he ended up picking the devil one because it's like, oh, he just likes that flavoring, or it just seemed more appealing? It's almost kind of a situation, and it seems like you're reading too much into that. But he goes and takes him to see Donatello, and it's like, of course, go to the one person who's literally still dealing with the whole not having a soul situation. Because Sam could probably give him the benefits of he's been in that exact same situation, but Donatello going through it currently probably puts him definitely in a better position of kind of handling. Because they even, Dean initially was kind of reluctant when Castiel was like, oh, you do it. But he's like, I can't. Like, I didn't handle the whole Sam not having a soul thing. I wasn't kind of the best person to handle that situation back then. But it's like, that experience kind of makes you the best person to handle this situation. So it's actually kind of sad when you actually hear Donatello kind of talk about the whole, like, not having a soul thing of, like, it's like the galaxy. It's all, these lights are on, it's this, spinning, bright thing, but at the center of it is a black hole. It's like, that's what I am. Like, that's what it's like for me. I don't feel anything. And even Jack's like, it's not that he doesn't feel anything, it just feels different. But for him, it's like, I don't know what it's like to not have a soul, so I don't know. Once again, it's like his situation is different. He is a Nephilim, after all, so it just adds this different layer to it. And even when it's all said and done, even Donatello, like, I honestly don't know. He seems like he's okay, but I love the whole thing of, like, for me, it's like, oh, when I'm trying to blend in, try to figure out, oh, what's the, typical normal, person with a soul thing to do. And he's like, I think, what would Mr. Rogers do? And Jack's like, who's Mr. Rogers? He's like, the best person I know. And for, Jack, the best people he knows is Sam and Dean. It's like, okay, so think of, WWWD. What would the Winchesters do, So just because he doesn't want them to worry anymore, I actually kind of halfway expected him to kind of take off on his own. I mean, granted, there's always a possibility he will do that. I mean, he has done it before, but it is a thing of, like, yeah, because even Donatello's like, my situation's different. I'm like simply a prophet of the Lord. He's a full-blown Nephilim. He is literally probably the most powerful being in existence, so no telling what's really going on in his head. And then, at the end of the episode, it's like, oh, you won't eat, you're sad. It's like, don't worry, I'll reunite you with your master, your friend, and kills it to put it back into heaven. So that's the thing with the soul. Like, you don't really look at things from a moral standpoint of, you just look at, like, oh, it's almost logical, it's because, like, Sam let Dean get bitten back in the day because it's like, oh, he knew that it would lead to them capturing the vampire to him. It's like he didn't let sentiment kind of get in his way, which it seems like it's a little bit there, like some twitch of humanity's there, hence why Jack did it. But it's almost like that humanity's a little tainted in regard of, like, aspects of, like, I don't know, like, because Jack still acts a little bit like Jack. He seems a little lost, like everything's kind of, once again, different. It doesn't seem like it washes over him the same way. It's really hard to explain and put into words what I'm trying to say, but it's like, there's something there. It does seem like it might not be that his entire soul is going, but enough of it is going, if not all of it, enough of it's going to kind of shift the balance in who he is. And so for him, it's like, he doesn't look at things from a very, like, oh, let me think and, abide by my feelings. It's just like, oh, like, when someone is sad, you reunite them with a friend. It's like, you're sad, you miss your friend's dead, so I'll just kill you so you reunite with your friend. That's the mentality he had about the snake. And it's like, Castiel obviously sees that. And that was kind of my thought process. Like, I mean, to be fair, my thought process was a little more like, oh yeah, he's going to go a little more evil. In this case, it's just going to be like, misguided nothingness. In a sense, he doesn't feel anything. He doesn't feel joy and stuff like that. So for him, it's just kind of like, he just kind of goes by like, oh, thinking like, oh, this is probably the right thing to do. Like, boom, won't really, you let his heart be his, guiding key, which I think for such a long time it has been. So, like I said, like as I brought up before, it's like, he is Lucifer's kid, so you would think that, it'd be like kind of a nature versus nurture situation. The nurture side of him was his soul, and that's, if not completely gone, most of it's gone, so you would think nature would kind of kick in. Nature, in his case, being, hey, your dad's Lucifer, so maybe that's a part of you, but, we don't know if that necessarily works with angels, because, but to be fair, like, that entire time we've known Jack, he's had a soul, he gained a lot of that goodness from his mom, so it's like, without that there, who's to say he won't shift over to being a lot like Lucifer? Who's to say he will? It's uncharted territory, like in this whole situation, a Nephilim without a soul, but little to no soul, essentially, so it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with Jack, because obviously, like, Cassio knows something's wrong, obviously, most likely want to share that with Sam and Dean, but it's like, how do you handle that situation? Like I said, because I made it seem like he might go full-blown evil, which I thought maybe was going to be the case, but it doesn't seem like that's necessarily going to be it. He'll probably be a little upset because, like, I don't understand why you're doing this, or maybe he will. I don't know. I'm so interested to see what they decide to ultimately do with Jack's character and everything. Once again, it's like, for now, like I said, it's like, there's no main antagonist right now because Michael's dealt with, but that doesn't mean they can't shift Jack over to be like a bad. Once again, he is literally the most powerful thing in existence right now. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they ultimately do. That's why I'm very excited to see what they have in store for us with the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legacies. A lot to break down about this episode. Obviously, there's a whole thing with, the Miss Mystic Falls pageants happening. All the while, turmoil is kind of happening all over the place. Penelope and Josie, and then Lizzie's getting Hope to enter the competition, which is super messed up because it's like, oh, the only person I can turn to do this is you, Hope. It's like, but you not once, and that is kind of messed up, not once did she think, oh, maybe I should ask my sister to do it. But because in Lizzie's head, it's like, oh, there's a science to it that obviously Hope was going to win because she knew that Hope had a tragic background that she could take advantage of. It's like, oh, you're an orphan, so, it's like, that's what it was. It wasn't, because Lizzie was so focused on winning, she didn't ever consider her sister's feelings and all of that, just, that was kind of like the, Lizzie's kind of self-centered like that and everything. And Penelope's trying to spend the entire episode telling her, it's like, this, and this. It's kind of sad. Like, I'll go ahead and break it down. I think it's super messed up what Penelope did. Like, granted, the truth is a good thing to be out there, but the fact is, truth should be told in the time they're necessary. But I guess you can make the argument, like in a particular case of Rick's truth, that he needed to tell his daughters, but he didn't. He kept putting it off because he didn't want that pressure and weight on them. But it's like, you not telling them? We saw that in the alternate timeline, like through the wishes that Lizzie had performed. It's like, had granted by the Jinn. It's like, the fact is, like, not telling them made things worse. And it's like, maybe if he had told them sooner, maybe things could have played out differently. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, the truth coming out sooner, sure, but it's like, at the same time, you should allow opportunities for things to play out the way they need to, That's the argument, that can be made about it. So, but you understand why Penelope did what she did, because obviously she knows everyone in the school's secrets because of the pin she gave out to everyone, and it allows her to get like a record of everything everyone said. So she ends up telling Landon the truth, which is interesting. Landon's like, you and me, you never actually spoken to me. She's like, well, you never had liquor before, because she's, free liquor in particular. Like, she's dealing with the whole, like, Lizzie and Josie thing, because it's like, Josie keeps losing on purpose. It's like, obviously there's a part of you that definitely wants to win this, but you don't want to win it. You're just giving it to Lizzie. Just, do what you want. You want to win. I know you do. And in the long run, I was like, okay, it's just because you love her and you don't like that she's kind of letting herself play second fiddle. It's like, no, because and in the moment she brings up, like, it didn't even cross my mind until she's like, the pins that tell secrets. I was like, right, a Lark secret. And in that moment, I'm like, that explains it. Because even Penelope's like, you'll understand one day why I did all the evil things I did. And it's like, it makes perfect sense why she has such an issue with Lizzie. It's not just, this is all a small part of something much bigger. Is because she knows the truth about everything now. It's like the reason why she's been pushing Josie even more lately is because she knows the truth. Because she wants Josie to be stronger, to kind of win fights. She wants Josie to stand up for herself and not just let Lizzie win. Because when it comes time for the merge, she's like, no, Josie would be so passive. She'd be like, no, you go ahead and win. And like Lizzie would be able to want to live on after she's absorbed Josie. But that's not what Penelope doesn't want. That she wants Josie to be the one. If there's going to be one of those sisters living in this world, of course she's going to pick the woman that she loves, so it makes sense. It's like, dude, it puts everything in perspective of why you kind of acted the way you have. Like, that's why you resent Josie. I mean, that's why you resent Lizzie even more. It's because you know that in the end, her being the way she is, like her selfish self, like she'd be the one that win instead of like the selfless sister, that being Josie, and that would bother the hell out of you. Not just only because of the personality that Josie has, being this very passive and very compassionate and selfless person, always sacrificing and letting her sister win. It's not just that, but once again, it's just because it's the woman you love. So it's sad because this all comes down just when Penelope is leaving the school because her mom got a job in like Belgium and she's going too. And then all this, like, there's the whole like Hope is obviously dealing with everything. Obviously things get more complicated because obviously she's like lashing out at people because she's trying to say like she's okay when in actuality she isn't. Landon's kind of like, oh no, he's like, he thinks like, oh, maybe she's kind of having cold feet because it's like, hey, things are good between us. I'm indestructible. You're nearly indestructible. We've kind of got a bright future. And it's like, lo and behold, Roman's there. It's like, wow, didn't see that coming. Turns out apparently he's been working for Rick for a while now. I guess even before, everything went down, when he was still attending his school and everything, he was working for Rick because he was like, oh, for the past 2 years. But to be fair, I guess the argument could be like, it has been like 2 years since the events of the original season finale. I guess that's one argument of kind of the series finale. I guess that's one argument that could be made in that regard. Because I was thinking like he was including the time he was at the school, but it's like, no, I think that's what he was meaning. Like, so it's been like 2 years since the series finale in certain regards. At the very least, since the last time we saw Roman, it's been like 2 years. So he goes out recruiting for him when the time comes. And so that was such an interesting thing because it makes, Landon jealous. I love him being like, yo, yeah, she's like, Hope is like, yeah, this is Landon, yeah, her boyfriend, who's a Phoenix. And that's pretty cool. And trying to like show off and being jealous and stuff like that. Because Landon even kind of lashes out too, because it's like, you're forgiving the dude that literally who was kind of responsible for your mom's death, but you kind of got pissed at me about stealing a knife and everything. For him, it just didn't seem right. Because obviously, because in his mind, because it's like, like you're a teenager, so you're a little insecure, like especially because this is probably like his real first love. So, and because Landon doesn't think much of himself. Because for him, it's like for the first time in his life, he's always been kind of normal. And for the first time in his life, he felt like, hey, I'm special. He even had that conversation with Penelope, which I thought was kind of interesting because like, I found out I'm a Phoenix. I came back from the dead from fire. But it is like, now I realize that I'm not special because I'm literally at a school of other people who are special. So special here is normal. I mean, to be fair, you're like a mythological creature that no one existed because for such a long time, the only existing supernatural creatures were vampire, witches, and werewolves. So it's still pretty dope, but he still doesn't feel that special. I mean, that's why it's kind of interesting because him and Hope being a thing too, it's got even more rare because it's like, oh, she's literally the only tri-breed that exists and he's the only Phoenix that we're at least aware of right now. So there's that. But, and he just, because he kind of felt like, oh, another special someone pops up, and Roman, it plays into his insecurities because he's always kind of felt, not special, and now even when he is special, he still feels not special. So it just plays into like, everyone's kind of got their character flaw, which I can kind of get back behind that, like the thought of like, because everyone has their insecurities, myself included. So I kind of have like, I can be very self-deprecating, and I think Landon can be too. He just doesn't have much faith in himself like that, So, but Penelope ended up telling him the truth that Hope's been hiding from him the entire time, And because I feel bad for Hope too, because so much is compounded upon itself. Like Landon finding out the truth that it's like you have been, getting on me about lying to you, but here you are lying to me. Like obviously his lies were a complicated situation, but now it's like you've lied to me about my mom, especially knowing how important it is for me, and you've held this secret, you've known and you've held this from me. Then on top of that, Hope is dealing with the fact that she's overhearing the conversation between Josie and Lizzie. It turns out the dress she's wearing is a dress that Klaus gave to Caroline. Like, I'm sure, like, if I remembered it clearly enough, that probably is the exact dress. Like, that from like the Vampire Diaries that he had given her or something like that. I just probably didn't remember. Because the dress was when she won Miss Mystic Falls. Because obviously, once again, it's like you kind of have to remember that from time to time. It's like, yeah, like her dad was super into Caroline. Obviously, like the final season of the originals played into that, but like that was a big part of his storyline in the originals. So it's like, yeah, he was always fascinated and by Caroline, but that's got to be more heart-wrenching because it's like, oh, you're wearing a dress. Because for Hope, it's the situation of her entire time being here. She was like, no, I'm under control. I have it under control. It's like, no, she didn't, because losing Landon was going to break her. She's barely holding on. She thinks she got. I was like, no, I dealt with my dad's death. I dealt with my mom's death. I'm good. It's like, that's why she's like, oh, I can forgive Roman. It's good. It's like, no, because there's a part of her that still hasn't. That pain is still there. It doesn't just go away because she hasn't properly dealt with it. She thought she had. And like I said, almost losing Landon like that almost broke her. She couldn't go through that again. I don't think there would have been any coming back for if Landon had stayed permanently dead. So there's that. That all ties in with like MG and his mom, and like his mom showing up being like, oh, my son killed someone, but Laura being like, don't worry, he came back to life and he holds no ill will towards your son. She's like, oh, I didn't know there's monsters in Phoenix. He's like, oh, those are new developments, so it's all kind of new for me too. So there's that. But then it's like, oh, a new girl shows up that you have MG being like, oh, he's kind of into and everything. Turns out that she's a Gorgon. It doesn't necessarily seem like she's Medusa, but she is more so. She is a Gorgon turning people to stone. It's kind of sweet because her reason for turning MG's mom to stone was like, oh no. Because it didn't click in my head. It's like, right, the person that was sent by Clark to retrieve Landon. It didn't click in my head to think it was her. But I was like, I figured she turned MG's mom to stone because she was kind of being messed up to him. Because it's like because his mom didn't want to face the situation. It's like she'd rather send him away overseas to deal with things rather than deal with it face on. And for MG, it's like, no matter what, at this school they see me for me, whether it be all my good sides and bad sides. They kind of accept me for me. But for his mom, it's like, even though you know about this and stuff like that, you handle it the way you do, you don't accept me for me. So you're, like I said, rather than facing this situation, you just want to cast it away. But it is kind of interesting because MG did kind of save Landon. I did love Landon when he ran into G. He's like, please don't be Medusa. Please don't be Medusa. But he ended up saving the day because obviously the only other way besides the bill was to slice her head off. And, Gia was kind of a decent enough person, so he didn't want to do that. I even love her being like, wait, you're a vampire? That's so dope. I guess it's a situation of like, it's like even the rare supernaturals being like, oh, wow, you're a vampire. That's cool, So I guess that kind of makes their situation a little... Because now it's like, oh, she doesn't have that awkward thing of like, oh, you're a human. But it's like, oh, you're another supernatural, so things are good between us. But I thought it was kind of neat. But he did tell, Gia, it's like, hey, Nia, I said Gia. Nia, that, hey, you can remedy the situation. Like, no matter how much you mess up, at the very least, you can have an opportunity to kind of grow. The best part at this school is like making up for your mistake, because that was one reason why MG loves this school, because it's like, despite what he's done, because of this school, he does have a second chance. And it's like, he's kind of trying to, MG standing on his own 2 feet with everything, so he kind of stands up to his mom, telling her this is where he wants to stay. And he's like, the only way he's leaving the school is either dead with a stake in his heart or graduation, preferably graduation. I'm wondering, does that mean Nia will be able to stay at the school? I mean, granted, there's the whole thing of like, well, because if she went back home or whatever, they'd probably track her down. I'm not unless Alaric and them are going to help with the whole like, oh, relocating them or whatever potential. I don't know. That'd be interesting to see her at the school, considering, well, because I don't think the whole MG and Lizzie thing is happening. So it's like, oh, new love budding in the air between him and Nia, and the whole situation once again of like, hey, another like, it'd be pretty dope, another like, hey, another supernatural we're not that aware of existing in this world. So there's that. Obviously, Landon, kind of decides to try and leave because it's like, he's pissed because, like, everyone's lied to him. Not only has Hope lied to him and Alaric has, and for him, it's like, this place is supposed to be my home, but now it just feels like everything I felt comfortable here with, feeling like I was finally at home, it's all based on a lie because you've lied to me. How can I be with people who are going to lie to me? It's like, obviously, they were all trying to protect him, but still, it's just kind of like, it's just kind of a lot, you know, especially now knowing it's like, I met my mom, I just don't remember her because she's literally thrown into Malivore. And that makes things worse because it's like, you know, and like I said, you know, Hope, you know, having tried to deal with the situation herself, you know, in a sense of like what it's like to lose a mom like that, she just wanted to protect Landon from that pain, but it's like maybe she made things worse. I don't know, like, because, you know, Hope's trying to figure this things out just like everybody else. She doesn't have any answers to all this. It is kind of sweet that Lizzie, that's what's so crazy. I love the direction you're taking the story because Lizzie's actually being there for Hope and everything, like being nice to Hope, because obviously she knows like a lot of her resentment towards Hope, it's like unfounded. Like obviously it was all, because even Hope was like, wait, why are most of my answers for this using about death and loss? It's like trying to play to it just because trying to use your tragedy as a, you know, kind of scoring bonus points. Also, I love the twist of like, oh, Lizzie's like suckering up the other judges, and then it's like, oh wait, and she says the last name. I was like, is that supposed to mean something? And it's like she looks at the pen that she has. It's like in love in memory of Dana. It's like, ooh, that's Dana's mom. And it's like, oh, Dana told me all about you. She's like, I hope it's a good thing. And she's like, no. So I was like, that was. I didn't expect Lizzie to kind of give out. She's like, okay, there's always next year, but hey, you know what I'm gonna do instead? I'm gonna give this opportunity to, you know, Hope. Because another thing too, it's like it would have meant a lot to, you know, Josie to kind of like continue the cycle. It's like even if, you know, Lizzie can't win it, it's like I can win it, not only for the school, which the school was also built by our mom. Also, interestingly enough, you know, thinking about it, like let's not forget that Klaus helped fund the school as well, so just kind of that connectivity right there too. But it's like I would have loved that followed in our mom's footstep. It's like, you know, it's just kind of interesting just to think about that. But Lizzie and, you know, Hope, it's like we hurt the people we care about most. And it's like the reason why Lizzie was able to help Hope is because it's like, for one, she's been through that situation. So she helped Hope kind of like extinguish all her anger at one point in time because she deals with that on a regular basis. But was also there to comfort her and say what was needed to say because, you know, Josie is always like that for her. So she's going to help. If Hope can help Lizzie repair her relationship with Josie, she'll help her with Landon, but that's going to be hard considering the fact is Landon got kidnapped. And I was like, oh my god, MG's mom took Landon. I was like, oh, she's working with him the entire time. And then Clark refers to her as Mrs. G. I'm like, of course, it never crossed my mind. Holy crap. Now that turns into that unlocks so many different questions. So obviously they're not all about this Malivore situation. At the very least, Miss G, I don't think she is. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Because Malivore getting released is going to like wipe out all the supernaturals. Like they're all about trying, like, because that was the whole thing of Clark being like, oh yeah, like you keep your supernaturals in line. Hopefully I never have to turn my eyes towards your school. So it's a situation of, I think they're trying to wipe out all supernaturals, which is going to include her son too. But maybe she figures like if, you know, MG was far away, maybe that's why she has such an issue with it too. Maybe it kind of plays, like, it makes you wonder, like, how she got started in all this. Is it, like, a family business thing? Like, what were the circumstances that led to MG becoming a vampire in the first place, too? Was that something on his mom's side of things, even though she has the issue she does with supernatural? Does she actually hate supernatural? Is it just part of her job? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Because, obviously, I doubt they're just going to throw Landon in the side of Malivore. Maybe they will when it's all said and done, but they probably need him to find a third key. Because that's what I was starting to think. I was like, are they going to just get rid of him because they don't want all three keys unlocking Malivore? But we know that Clark put the other key in there, that being the urn. So it's like, is that something that she doesn't want or she does want? Because obviously he made sure to kill some people who know more information. Because even the whole Landon situation, even with Sayla, like he hid that from other people. He pushed that one dude in there who found the picture. So it's obviously he's got his own agenda of like him trying to unlock Malivore. But I guess she wants to keep it closed. So like she wants to collect the pieces. So it's like, hey, when it's all said and done, we can keep Malivore locked away. And she needs Landon because he can find the different keys. He's attracted to him and kind of unlocks them. So it's hard to say which side of things she's on. Considering she has a supernatural son, you would think she wouldn't want to release what is essentially a supernatural hell on Earth. But maybe that's the whole point, you know? Maybe she only wants to do it here in the States. Maybe the Triad isn't like a worldwide organization type of thing. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm very interested to see where all of this is going to take us going forward into the next episode, because this is going to be complicated for MG. Already has a complicated relationship with his mom. It's going to get even more complicated when he finds out that his mom is a part of an organization that hunts down supernatural creatures and throws them into a darkness so that these particular creatures are forgotten. So there's that. It's also interesting too to think about too. It's like, well, Landon, I mean, you would assume, you know, because obviously he's a phoenix, and it's like, oh, no records of a phoenix or whatever, so like obviously they were forgotten. But it's like, obviously magic seems like it has like little effect on Landon. I mean, she never actually tried, but I'm curious, like, did she actually try and it just not work? I mean, to be fair, her powers don't seem like they work on supernaturals, because they didn't work on MG because he's a vampire. So I was like, oh, so it wouldn't have worked on Landon either way. Which is also interesting too, I should note. It's interesting that this complicated thing with MG's mom happened, especially considering the fact is, like, not only did MG kill Landon, so there was a bit of awkwardness there, but it's also the fact is of like, oh yeah, like, MG and Landon are even, they're kind of on good terms now to a certain extent. It's still, like I said, the awkwardness of like, yeah, you killed me, but luckily I came back to life, but that's still kind of something hard to deal with. So it's just kind of interesting that, like, all this MG, Landon connected stuff is just kind of compounding upon itself. It's just interesting to think about. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.